All right, we're doing it. Podcast number 1, man.
Welcome.
Welcome. Yeah. So you and I decided to do a podcast, and we have a certain idea for the podcast, and we are kind of doing this first one as just kind of a test, just you and I, to talk a little bit about our ideas for the podcast, why we're doing it, and what it's going to be like. So introductions. I'm Jeremy,
And I'm Eric.
and we're brothers. And kind of the way the podcast idea came about is you and I both are going through at the same time, strangely enough, within weeks of each other,
If that long.
if
yeah.
that long, strangely enough, are in major life changes in our lives. And so they're both based around a relationship. So a lot of differences in our situations, but a lot of similarities as well. I think your situation is a little bit more abrupt and slap in the face kind of situation, and you're finding yourself all of a sudden single.
Yep.
My situation is a little bit more mutual in nature, but still finding myself after being in a relationship for 10 years and living with someone for 10 years, all of a sudden living by myself. So it's quite the adjustment, both good and bad. There's pros and cons to it. And same kind of thing for you. Long-term relationship, and all of a sudden it's over, and now you got to deal with all the bullshit that comes after the fact. Which pretty much anyone listening probably can relate to.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
We all have our story that way, and
That's kind
we can relate to them.
That's right. And that's kind of where the genesis of the idea of doing a podcast was. At first it was like, hey, let's do a podcast. Then we can just kind of talk and vent, because we spend all our time, talking anyway about our situations. So we thought what would be cool is, as we were talking about our own situations, we kind of you kept talking about, like, she said this and I said that, and she thinks this and I think that. And I was like, dude, it just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And what I meant by that was, one person has their perspective and you have yours, and they could be totally opposed to each other in their perspective, but you'll never get that person to change their perspective most times. So it just doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter how hard you fight to change someone's mind or stuff like that. But, that kind of led us into the conversation of how everyone's story is different. And that's kind of the idea of the podcast is we just want to get average, everyday people in here to talk to us about maybe specific stories that we know about these people. And we want to start with friends, family, coworkers, and talk to them and hear their stories, get the story within the story, because I think it'll be super interesting to find out more about and get to know better the people that we say that we already know. So we've decided to kind of based on an old saying, is we decided to call the podcast Enter as Strangers. And as the saying goes, enter as strangers, leave as friends. And that's kind of the idea of the podcast, is that we're going to be digging into relationships with people we have. I think it's going to be fun, man.
It's going to be a blast. I'm really excited to get some of these guests in here and, widen our own perspective on people who we know, in-laws and so on. And, and you spent years with these people, but I've come to the recent revelation that how well do you really know anybody? You think you know somebody, but in an instant you don't anymore.
Yeah.
And even the people closest to you, you've heard the stories through your own perspective and your own eyes and ears, when theirs could be totally different. But to get them in here and share their perspective with them, and in turn widen our perspective and hopefully even widen their perspective.
Maybe we can get your ex in here at some point.
Boy, let's not go there right now. That's a long way down the road there.
Yeah, for sure, right?
But yeah, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. This is way out of my comfort zone personally. I'm not one to typically put myself out there and so on. But I think it's worth it. I think it'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I do too. I think it'll be cool. I think just to kind of give an overview, and we've talked about this, is we'll get someone in here. Let's just kind of paint the picture. so that anyone listening can kind of know what they're in for. So we'll get someone in here. Let's say we've talked about a few different people. Obviously, get our brother in line here. Someone that married our sister 5 years ago, or give or take. And when they started dating, we heard stories about him, and we were like, "What?" And we've heard the stories, and we were like, "What is she thinking?" But now that we've come to know him, we're like, "Oh, he's a big teddy
One of
bear."
the nicest guys.
One of the nicest
Yeah,
guys, right?
he'd give you the shirt off his back if you could.
And the story we heard was just this vague story. So we get him in here. We'll tell him, we'll say, "Here's what we heard," right? So we give our perspective of him in that time frame
Yep.
of the story,
Yep.
and then we let him tell the story.
Absolutely.
And then we probably will be floored at some of the details of his story, and also we'll probably be like, "Well, that's way different than I thought."
Yeah, I'm sure some of it will make us laugh. Some will make us go, "Whoa, what the hell?"
Yeah,
and
exactly.
It's gonna be fun to get it firsthand.
Yeah, it'll be awesome to get it firsthand. You were saying something a little bit earlier when you were kind of talking about, getting people in here and hearing their stories and things like that. I really hope that, like, as we get more and more people in here, and I don't think anything should be topic specific. I want to cross the board with everything. Like,
No, for sure. I mean, anything. Honestly, there is no subject matter untouched.
Right.
From entrepreneurship to addiction
Right.
to relationship to just plain comical, funny stories.
Comical,
just adolescent,
funny
stupid
Yeah.
stories.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
what the hell was I thinking? Stories.
I
mean,
know.
I think everyone can relate, especially
Yeah.
to those ones, and
Yeah.
it'll be really interesting to hear what comes out of people's mouths.
What? Let's try something here.
What?
Okay, and I'll ask you, and if you need a minute to think about it, then I'll go first. But this is something we talked about a little bit. But what was something you did as a teenager that was so stupid that you look back and go, "I can't believe I did that"?
Oh, man, I mean, to pin one thing down would be pretty tough. I look back at my adolescence, go, the whole freaking time frame was stupid. I did plenty
know.
of stupid shit.
Of
and
course.
It all meshes together.
Does it really?
It really does, but I'll sit and think for a second and see if I can narrow one down here.
Yeah. Well, this is something that we talked about a few days ago of like a question we could ask, the people that we have in here from time to time, and see, because what's funny is I bet you anything that the shit people will say is going to be a lot of the similar stuff,
Mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm.
So, like, I've got a bunch too. But one that just really stands out in my head is, man, I was 16 at least, maybe 17. I think 16 because I just started driving. Didn't have a car, but was dating a girl who moved into our area and started going to our high school. She was from Southern California. We were up, Northern California. Started coming to our school, and she was staying. She transferred up from Southern California and was living with family. Was living with her aunt and uncle. Her aunt and uncle had two young kids, two young girls, I believe, and I'm talking like 5 or 6, somewhere in that age. Now, the uncle and the aunt were in our church at the time. We grew up LDS, just for the sake of the conversation. We grew up LDS. So the uncle was at the time my one of my youth advisors, or whatever you want to call it, one of the youth leaders for my particular age group. Anyway, started dating his niece. She was the new girl in town, the new girl in the ward, and I took an interest in her. We started dating. Really nice girl, and dating a while, and to get to that stage where you're starting to be a little bit more daring and stuff like that. Long story short, we had to have lived probably 5 miles away from each other, and she was staying. This is crazy, dude. I can't believe I'm telling this story. She was staying at her uncle's, but she was sharing a room with her 2 cousins. Cousins, right? Yeah. So
Mm-hmm.
she's sleeping in the same room with 2 little girls. And she, either I don't know if we prearranged it or if she, back then you weren't texting nobody,
Yeah,
or if
no,
she'd
no,
call
for
me or
sure.
whatever. But she says, "Come over to the house tonight."
You probably had pager codes and stuff,
This is before pagers. This is before pagers. She says, "Come over to the house tonight." So long story short, I had my license but didn't have a car, and snuck out of the house, jumped on the old bicycle, rode that 5 miles to her house. She says, "Just tap on the window when you get here." I tap on the window. She opens the window up. Screen's already off. She says, "Come in." And I'm like, what am I doing? Stupid
Yep.
adolescent hormone teen. I go in, and I'm not even thinking at the time, oh, she shares a room with her 2 cousins. I sneak in through the window into the house of a person that I honestly respected. He was a great guy, right? Get in there, and instantly the 2 young girls kind of start stirring and stuff, and we didn't even do anything really. I got through the window and was like, this is the dumbest shit I have ever done in my life, and got back out that window, got on that bike, and I pedaled home as fast as I could. I came in, snuck back in the house, went to bed. The next day, I had to go to work, and Dad had to drive me to work at the time. So we're about halfway to work, and he says to me, I know I'm not going to get this exactly right, but just out of the blue, he hasn't said anything. He says to me, "You need to quit sneaking out of the house at night." Or whatever. Just says it. Doesn't say nothing. Doesn't say
That
your
sounds
mom
like
knows
Dad.
or whatever.
Yep.
Just says, "I know you snuck out of the house." And that was all he had to say.
Yeah.
Right? And I was
Yeah.
like, oh, shit, man. Busted. But, man, just one of those things when I look back, still turns my gut and going, what? I'm basically breaking and entering into someone's house. And worse than that, a house into the room of 2 little girls, too, to spend time with my girlfriend. So that was, it's making me sweat right now just thinking about it. And I probably could come up with a bunch of different stories that would be the same, but being that this is the first podcast, that's probably the one I'm most comfortable talking about. That rides the fence of comfortable, uncomfortable. But man, we do stupid stuff when we're teenagers.
We do, and a lot of my stories were more almost, I did a lot of stupid shit for sure. Don't get me wrong. A lot of my stories are during those time periods. Bad place, bad time.
It's probably
wrong place, wrong time.
It's probably worth mentioning that I'm the oldest of 4 and you're the youngest.
Yeah, that's true.
So I feel like your getting in trouble stories are more frequent and worse because you're the youngest, and that's typically how it goes, or at least how I've observed it goes over the years.
I'll give you just a story. Bad timing. Chalk it up to bad timing, but
bad timing, not bad decision making.
Well, probably a little bit of both. Yeah, of course, you're a dumb kid, at the time, but got a couple that really stick out. But it was one night, and me and 3 of my buddies were out in kind of the sticks in a way out west there, and Jaron had his Bronco at the time, big old Bronco lifted up, and there used to be some great mudding holes out there. I remember from back when, and we decided, hey, let's go. Let's go out there and go mudding. We had nothing to do, so we went out there and took Jaron's Bronco, and all 4 of us took turns driving, and just this wide open, flat, grass plains area that's just thick, yummy mud, and so we're just hauling ass around, having fun, not bothering nobody. It's not like it's in a neighborhood or anything. And I'm the last one to go, so I'm the last driver. So I'm driving and get done, and out there's this long access road, and
you're driving his Bronco.
I'm driving his Bronco.
Right. Okay.
And there's just this long access road, and it's just up and down, whoop-de-whoops, and it's not a smooth road by any means. But pretty soon, I'm hauling some pretty good ass in his Bronco, and pretty soon I see these lights getting closer and closer behind us. I'm like, what the hell? And I'm hauling ass on this road, and they're getting closer and closer still. Finally get to the pavement, and we get going, and pretty soon those lights are on me, and red and blue start flashing.
Oh, Jesus.
And pulls us over, and I'm the one driving still. The guys are all in the back, and and gets us out of the car. You know, they thought it was some huge DUI case, right? Thought we were drunk.
The
and
cops?
The cops did, yeah. They got me out and started giving me field sobriety tests. I nailed all of them. Gave me a breathalyzer. I blew nothing. I had one beer earlier, but I was of age at the time.
Right.
And blew nothing. And the guy's, you know, oh, mine must be broken. Goes, grabs another cop's breathalyzer test. Gives me another one. Pretty soon, I shit you not, the whole department of that city was out there. There had to have been 15, 20 cops, easy.
Are you serious?
I'm dead serious.
How many are there were you guys?
There's 4 of us.
Oh, jeez.
And so while they're doing that, they're searching the Bronco and doing all this kind of crap. And that one I blew nothing on. Grabbed a third one from another cop. Let's try this one. Still nothing. And I, you know, they brought their field sobriety specialist out, gave me all the tests, all, you know, touch your finger, walk the line, all that stuff. Nailed them. There's, you know, nothing going on.
Right.
Turns out, I guess, where we were mudding was a piece of government property. It wasn't posted or anything like that. It was, you know, no fence or anything.
Was it owned by the base?
No, it was. It's out in the wetlands, kind of the
Right.
bird sanctuary area out there in west of Centerville.
Yeah.
And so we were out there just having fun, you know, not bothering nobody. But they did, you know, and I passed all these tests and come to find out, you know, unbeknownst to me, they had found what appeared, their word, appeared to be an empty bag of cannabis, marijuana,
Right.
in the Bronco. Gave us all possession charges. Just like
What?
that.
So they found an empty baggie.
Yeah. Gave us all possession charges, you know, sent us on our way.
Jeez.
And so on, and so we had a report to court together, and we did. And Jaron and I went, and another buddy Glenn, and we showed up there, and maybe I should change names for the sake of this, but sorry, Grandma.
Secret time.
Yeah. Anyways, you know, we got sentenced to 3 days in county jail for it.
Did
Right.
you really?
Yeah. Oh yeah. So
But you didn't go to county.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
You did?
We spent 3 days in there together.
What?
All in the same section. All in the same.
What'd you plea?
Shit, I don't remember. Playing a bands probably or something, but, you know, because of other adolescent stupid shit, there's small little things here and there, and the judge is like, well, you guys need to learn a lesson. So,
Oh, stuff you got in trouble for before.
yeah, like an alcohol ticket or just minor stuff, all minor stuff, you know, but so.
That's crazy, dude.
That just triggered
that's
another
funny.
story in my head. That's a really good one. But anyways, we all got sentenced together, right? And we
Right.
had to spend 3 days. I was in county with 2 of my best friends, and it was the worst thing ever.
Really?
It was the worst thing ever. We didn't even hardly talk to each other.
Why not?
It's weird when you're in there. It's just this total different scenario.
How many days?
3.
3 days.
It's only 3 days, but it was the worst.
You guys were just in a holding cell for 3 days?
No, we were actually locked. We were,
Oh.
you know, booked and in the
But
actual facility.
Okay, but so you were in a cell
Yeah. Well, yeah.
with one other person,
Yeah, and this guy
And
was a crack up dude.
but he wasn't one of your friends.
No.
Oh.
I can't remember his name.
So when you
but-
guys were in the common areas, you wouldn't talk?
No, it was weird.
Behind-
I would sit there and read books, and, you know, guys are walking the line just pacing all freaking day long. My roomie was, I'd hardly talk to him because he was asleep 23 and a half hours of the day. He would pop his head up for a head count, boop, and he was back down. I guess he was, you know, some meth addict and gone on, you know, Grand Theft Auto spree and some shit, and so he was just all strung out. But
That's so funny.
yeah,
That's
it
so
sucked. We were
funny.
in there for 3 days by ourselves. You know, when you first get there, everybody, you know, doesn't want to give you shit. You know, you get your paper and you get your pencil type thing. And, you know, no one wants to give you nothing. They all got, you know, the snacks and all this shit and the coffee and all that. But as soon as they know you're leaving, oh, they are on you like
Oh, yeah,
flies
of
on
course.
shit. And they want everything you got.
Of course.
They want everything you got.
Yeah.
Oh, but, you know, how's about the extent of it for the most part? It just sucked, but just one of those stories.
Dude. That's so funny that you had to go to court
Mhm.
and they booked you for 3 days.
Yeah.
That, as you were telling that story, it's like the same. This is what I'm saying.
First and last time and only time ever going, by the way.
To jail.
So, yeah.
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 Well, here's what's funny, right? That story, I have a similar one, a little bit similar one, but it just kind of shows the variance of like what can happen. And this and this is what will be interesting about talking to people is because that story is probably easily repeatable by almost anyone.
Yeah, for sure.
One time, Bill and I, we got this little spot up one of the canyons that we go to to like, build a fire, hang out and whatnot, drink some beers, even though I wasn't much of a beer drinker ever. But working with a guy that I worked with, and this is like early 20s, maybe mid 20s, somewhere in there. And we go up there all the time. And one time we bring this guy. His name was Kevin. We go, and it was me, Bill, and Kevin. And it was after we went snowboarding one time. We went up there, and this was like late summer snow or late spring snowboarding when up at, you're boarding up at the top of the canyon, but you can be down low, and there's no snow. So we're up here at this spot that we've been to a million times, right? And Kevin brought some weed, right? And it was just this little one hitter, and so we all smoked it and stuff, and we're just standing around having a good time, just talking, the three of us. And then out of nowhere, and this isn't like just off the road, this is off the road, cross a water pipe, across the river, down a little path, up, but obviously an area that gets frequented enough by people up there that the sheriffs know where they're at. We're sitting there just bullshitting and whatnot. Little do we know that there are sheriffs watching us, right? So all of a sudden they come, boom, walking up, flashlights on. There's two of them. Hey guys, what are you doing? How's it going? We're like, hey. And somehow he hit this little one-hit little thing he had, this little box, right? He's like, we know you guys are smoking weed. We were all of age, drinking wise, which I can't remember at the time it was a holiday weekend too, which is why it was probably stupid as for be there.
Yeah.
But long story short, they're like, we know you're smoking weed, whatever. They start searching one of us first, and this guy Kevin just sneakily takes this little thing and he just drops it into his pants, right down his crotch. When the cops weren't looking, I didn't even notice. Bill didn't notice, right? so they're like, search us. They can't find anything, and one of them goes, "Hey, I must have threw it in the fire and whatever." And they're like, "All right, guys. Well, they give us all tickets, possession charges. They don't take us in, right? Did you get taken in?
No, they usually won't on something like that.
Possession charges. They're like, have a good night, stay out of trouble, blah blah blah. So you got to show up in court, right? For some reason, Bill and I's court date was the same. I still remember the judge's name too. Bill and I's court date was the same, but Kevin's was different. So we go in, we talk to a public defender briefly. They're just going to have us come up at the same time. We plead no contest. I know that things have changed now. We plead no contest, which means you're not admitting guilt. The judge says, all right, pay a $25 fine and go.
Are you serious?
Yeah. Kevin goes in a couple days later, and I haven't talked to him, so he doesn't know what happened with us. He pleads guilty based on what the public defender tells him.
Oh, man.
Poor
bastard.
Gets like some ungodly amount of community service, hours of community service. So I meet up with him after the fact. He calls me or something like that, and he's like, "Oh, dude, I can't believe this community." I'm like, "Community service? What are you talking about?" He's like, "You didn't get community service?" And we're like, "No, we had to pay $25 and we're done." He's like, "What?" He was so pissed. And we're like, "We just said no contest," and they said pay a $25, court fee or whatever, and you're gone. You're out the door. So he was so pissed, and he had to do that community service forever. And he was every time he was like, he was mad. He was so mad at us, and we're like, dude, you can't blame us because we did what we should have done and pleaded no contest or whatever. But I think it's just funny because that's what's weird is I haven't, even if maybe I knew at one point, I have no recollection of you spending any time in jail.
Well, that's going to be the beautiful thing about this podcast. We're brothers and see each other on a pretty regular basis for the most part. And you think you know their stories and stuff, but it's fun to learn that kind of stuff about people. And yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, it'll be pretty good. I think that man, that's the thing. I think that like listening to you tell that story triggered a memory for me to have a similar story, and that's what'll be cool. That's what I think that the podcast will flow, and I want to try to do long format podcast like at least an hour.
Yeah,
just because I think it's better to do long format podcasting because they're the ones. Personally, when I listen to podcasts, I like them. I like 3 hour podcasts.
And it gives the listener a chance to really engage
Right. Well,
with it.
you really get to one hear someone's story, understand their opinion, learn stuff. That's for me is what would be awesome is to like learn things because it's the idea of having someone we've met through business in here to talk about their story
Mm-hmm.
and how they got from A to B and stuff like that, and it'll just be the amount of knowledge you can get in a long format conversation.
Yeah, and hopefully people learning a lot of stuff about themselves along the way. Honestly,
Like the guests or the listeners.
Both. Honestly, we tend to be as humans, we tend to be pretty closed-minded to our own perception of things, and kind of rightfully so.
Oh
And,
yeah.
but having a different perspective, hopefully people can take a pause and go, "Whoa, I never really saw it that way or thought of it that way." And if that can happen, I'm happy. I'm happy with the podcast at that point.
Yeah, it'd be great to have some sort of altruistic greater good that can come of the thing, but
Yeah.
I think the key will be is just to have conversations and let that stuff happen organically.
Mm-hmm.
You said something earlier or way earlier when we started recording that I found interesting. You said, you think you know somebody, and that'll be why it's interesting to talk to people.
Mm.
I think when you said what you think you know someone, it's probably got a little bit more weight behind it because of your situation than
Well, for
they
sure,
probably usually do not.
naturally.
But you know what's
Even that, but with another major driving force for me is, like I said earlier, I can't, it's hard to articulate it sometimes, but the purpose of what we're here to do in a way, and the support that has come my way through this current circumstance from the most unlikely places.
right?
Customers I work with, had a professional relationship for years with, but their support has just blown me away and really solidified this need to foster that, and to reciprocate
Right.
compassion and love.
That
and
just tells
joy.
me that for me, that just tells me that you're doing things the right way.
I certainly hope so.
Well, what I was gonna say is that like you think you know somebody, and the funny thing is people think they know themselves.
Oh,
right?
they're
'Cause
convinced they do.
We are the stories we tell themselves. But so
Absolutely.
many times, especially with people you're really close to, you're like, oh, dude, you're not the person that you say you are.
No.
You know what I'm saying? You say X, Y, and Z, and sometimes it takes years for the outside person to figure that out, and sometimes it takes even longer for the person themselves to figure it out, if at all.
Yeah, I mean, that's the sad part of it. It's hard to look in the mirror sometimes and to really analyze yourself. It's always easier to see it from the outside. We all know that,
But it's even bigger than it's hard to look in the mirror, because looking in the mirror, as an expression, looking at yourself, some people don't even conceptualize of that concept that that's something
No.
that you should do.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Like,
their
is
stories
no-
are so solid and
It's-
so firm.
It's that thing.
Yeah.
And that thing, right now I'm holding my hands about 2 inches away from my face, and it's that thing. It's like people, everybody from time to time, but those people that just cannot, they don't even conceive of a space that's outside of just what's right there in
Their
front
world.
of them.
Yep.
Yeah.
And it's, it sticks a lot of people and it creates suffering. I mean, let's be honest about it. It creates a lot of internal self-suffering.
Yeah.
I always relate to like horse blinders, they got those, they can only see what's directly in front of them. They have no outside perspective, no peripheral vision to possibly anything else around them.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's why it doesn't matter. That's back to what I was saying. It doesn't matter.
I mean, at the end of the day, that's the core truth of it all. You
Yeah.
would hope it would matter, and you hope people might decide it matters, but at the end of the day, that's about the only thing you can take away from it.
Well, that's the thing. People are so inherently selfish.
Well, naturally, yeah, I think that's a human tendency.
Yeah.
Sad but true.
I mean, I guess. I mean, I've heard plenty of, people way smarter than me on podcasts and stuff like that talk about that, is an evolutionary need, or was an evolutionary need, is to be selfish and to be wired for worst case scenarios and negativity, because that's how we survived as a species, but we're kind of way past that. And I think that, like, that's what people struggle with. Is I don't even think they know they struggle with it.
No,
And I'm
it's
just
so
hypothesizing
encoded
here.
into who we
Right.
are as a human.
It's like, why do I feel this strife and this struggle?
Right.
It's like one of the guests we're going to have on that I've known for years, since I was 14 or so, a good friend of mine who has recently he's going through a transition different than ours, but still just has a huge magnitude, to it. But, before he took the steps that he personally needed to take, he had all this resistance and suffering, and those things that are hardwired into him, and he's like, I don't get why this and I don't get why that. And it was like, well, there's something's telling you that what you're doing isn't working.
Well, at least he's beginning to question it, which is in and of itself a good thing. I mean, really, I know it's a hard concept for people to sometimes grasp, but just stop and think about it for a moment. Since the day you took a breath on this planet, everything you know has been taught to you, told to you. You learn through experience and through, someone's example.
Right.
All conditioning.
Right.
And not that it's necessarily right or wrong, but just knowing that you have been conditioned this way isn't the only way, and there's a ton of information out there.
I know. Well, then you go even further, and you talk about, like, the foods we eat can have.
Oh yeah, dietary stuff.
Yeah, it can have huge impacts on our behavior,
Mm-hmm.
on how we view things, on our brain chemistry and stuff. That's the thing. It's like a ton of people, and like, not like we're any more special than anyone else, but it's
no,
just,
don't get us wrong here. We're in no
yeah.
way above anyone on anything in this matter.
It's just interesting that
it's just about information and getting it out.
Yeah. Well, that is kind of an interesting concept, is that everything you've learned is conditioned and or taught to you, or it's all conditioning, like you're saying.
Sure, religion,
right?
church, teachers, parents,
siblings, friends,
yeah,
all that stuff.
all of it.
But I mean, I guess depending on what you think about, the makeup of the cosmos, or however you want to put it, that the idea, whether it's accurate or not, who really knows, but the idea that there's if everything that you know, or everything that you are, has been conditioned and taught to you over since you were a little kid, is there something that are there things because they are just universal truths, because you instinctively are born with them? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But even if you're born with them, they're quickly erased or recorded over by a bunch of other.
Well, I think that's why
bullshit.
a lot of people don't trust their instincts like they probably should in a lot of ways, because all the other outside noise that they've learned through the years is going, well, it's making them second guess stuff.
Yeah.
And it just gets clouded along the way.
Yeah, man, it does get clouded along the way. It's like, oh man, it's like, it's funny. It's easy to go, oh, we all know people that struggle with this and struggle with that. But it's like, even myself, just like, it's like, oh man, I don't even know how to put it, but you go, I don't know. It's tough. It's like, how you are, right? Your tendencies, things that you do. And like, sometimes I go, oh, that person I interact with over there, they, or at least from my perspective, they have no clue why they're doing what they're doing. They're choosing to suppress it, ignore it, or whatever. So sometimes I'm like, oh, I do this because of this. I have this tendency because this happened to me when I was a kid, or this happened to me in a previous relationship. Sometimes it sucks it's almost like it'd be better not to realize, not to connect the dots or follow the kite string back, right? And just be like,
it's ignorance, and ignorance is bliss.
Ignorance is bliss,
straight up it
like,
is.
I don't know.
Yeah,
Well,
it's totally bliss.
It's just who I am.
No, because there becomes a responsibility and an accountability once that ignorance is gone.
Which makes it harder,
It makes it really hard.
Yeah.
I struggle with it all the time.
Yeah.
Going, I wish I would have never taken my blinders off, in a way.
Yeah.
Because it does. It makes it difficult.
Yeah. It definitely does. Well, I'm not. Isn't it weird how conversations go? 1 minute we're talking about being in jail and being in court. The next thing we're talking
That's
about.
the beautiful thing about a podcast. No censorship. It can be what it needs to be. And, honestly, it's not going to resonate with everybody.
No.
The topics and conversations.
Who cares, man?
Well, whatever.
We just need to be, for lack of a better term, unfiltered.
Yeah.
I don't want to be editing these at all. I don't want to be editing ourselves the way we talk.
No.
I also don't want to be editing the actual recording,
Yeah.
But and that's what I'm hoping to get out of our guests is that, is them to know, and unless, you get down the line a week later and that person calls you up and goes, I really can't have you put that in the podcast.
Well, I mean, yeah.
Then you got to pull that out or not
fine.
release it or whatever. But
I mean, at the end of the day, what is it? The sixth dimension? Is it the sixth dimension? Information that, they call the sixth dimension.
Is that what they call information?
Yeah. That, you've got all the dimensions.
It's not the fifth dimension?
Is it the fifth?
Well, because you got, we're going to sound really stupid here. You got the 3 dimensions, which is basically length, width, and height, right? 3D space. Time is the 4th dimension. So it's the 5th.
Whatever it is.
Yeah.
But the idea that the information, whether right, wrong, or indifferent, it's information. Draw your own conclusions at the end of the day,
Yeah, because information isn't.
But it's all information, and we don't want to censor that information in different people's perspectives. I mean, psychology, the mind, the human mind is just a complex thing that none of us will truly fully understand ever.
I don't know. Maybe they will
at some point.
The singularity, right?
There's a lot of smart-ass people out
2024, they say.
Oh no,
2045 is when they'll create a computer as powerful as the human brain. Maybe then.
Yeah, maybe.
Who knows?
Maybe.
Dude, I'd love to have a futurist on here to talk to. You know what I mean? There's smart people like that. That'd be so cool to get people like that on here.
And eventually I think we will. It's amazing how massive this place is, but how tiny it is.
Oh, I know.
The macro in the micro, or the micro in the macro.
It's like the 6 degrees of separation.
Yeah.
Right?
You know somebody.
Yeah. Well, you just get on LinkedIn.
Yeah, no shit, right?
And you're like, oh my gosh, I'm only 2 people removed from that person.
Yeah.
And you're like, what? That's weird.
The people are out there, and I think the people are willing to tell their story. Everyone likes to tell their story. It's what,
Some more than
we've been telling stories as humans for millennia on pictographs and on stone tablets, and we've been telling stories for as long as we've been around.
Yeah.
And people love to tell their stories. And,
Well, I'm sure we'll come up with some cool, themes and stuff. There's so many podcasts out there.
I know.
I really just want to. It's something to do, right?
Yeah.
It's something to do, just to freaking sit in a room and talk to people.
I think it's one of the greatest things we have today, podcasts. And
there's no doubt. It's changed
everything.
It's changed. I'd say it's changed the world, but I think it's changed the internet in a big way. I think it's changed a ton of stuff. I mean, podcasts, not that ours will ever get to this degree, and nor that I know I'd want to deal with the responsibility of it, but there are podcasts out there that have 10 times the viewership of network news shows.
Well, they're probably, sponsored, and when you're sponsored, your content is now edited and controlled in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And filtered.
Well, and I know, especially if you're produced.
Yeah.
If, there are produced podcasts out there that fall under a network of some sort of media umbrella, and they do podcasts, but they're censored to the degree that, you can do this, you can talk about this, you can have these people on, but yeah. That's why some of the best podcasts are just, average people, I think. out there. So yeah, I think it'll be. I'm super jonesing to get someone in here. So you talked to Brody,
I did.
but he said weeknights work better?
Yes.
But did he say a specific weeknight work better?
No, he said just any weeknight would probably be better. So than a weekend.
What's today? Monday?
Tuesday?
No, today's Monday.
No, man. Where are you at? Today's Tuesday.
I don't know. It's just life change, dude.
I know. I'm with you. I can't keep square of time lately in days. Yeah. It all blends together.
I know.
Feel like I don't know. Feel like you're just floating in the air, waiting to come down, see where the pieces lie, and it's just all in discombobulated mode.
I know. You know what sucks? You know what's super tough about? Like, I can only speak for my situation. I assume that a lot of it's the same for you, but a little bit different, obviously. But like, what the trip is like, you make a decision to make a change, right? Since that's what I'm talking about is relationships, I'll just say you make a change in a relationship, right? And you got, as I see it, basically three ways of making a change in a relationship. It's either one person's making the decision, the other person's making the decision, or you're kind of making the decision together. And that's a little bit of my situation, but it gets gray at sometimes. But you decide. My point is you decide to make a change. Okay, you make a change that where you're trying to be cooperative and make it mutual and stuff like that, because you need. In my situation, I was kind of losing who I was, and since the change, since the change has taken place, it's not like I have any more free time. It's just the crap I got to take care of is just different. So there's still this interaction. There's still this this stuff that's got to be dealt with, and I'm sure that over time things will quiet down, because it's a huge adjustment to get used to, because you get addicted to having. Addicted is probably the wrong word, but you get used to the patterns. You get used to your patterns.
Well, you fill your time up with it. I mean, that's what your time was filled with, and now that all that stuff, all of a
sudden it's different.
Is gone, and you're going, whoa, and it's way different.
Well, and that's the thing. Shock. Like even though it wasn't like, like your situation where someone's just like, I don't want to do this anymore, so we need to end it. Right? I didn't have that situation. So I can only imagine that this is magnified for you, but for me, you go through the situation, moving, dealing with all this stuff. It is so hard in the other aspects of life, whether it's work, friends, whatever. All of a sudden it's like, dude, it's hard to keep focused.
It's for almost me, impossible.
I would say definitely for you, it's impossible to stay focused. It's like you don't want to work, you don't want to do this, you don't want to do that, and everything else starts to go to shit too because it's being affected.
Well, you're in, for me at least, you're in shock. This is for me, in my perspective. Out of the blue, relationship was going great for a long time. Out of the blue, boom, it's done. And like I said, you feel like you're just tossed up in the air, waiting to come down, and so you can't focus on any one thing because you don't know which direction anything's going in.
Yeah.
You don't have any answers or reason to any of it, and you're trying to find that reason.
Meanwhile,
but good freaking luck.
Yeah, and meanwhile, your ego is just
screaming,
throwing rocks at everything it can throw rocks at, trying to get some sort of, footing.
Yeah. That's a futile fight right there.
That was a horrible analogy I just made.
Yeah, that's okay. I think people can understand that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of what I've tripped on. It's like, all right, I got everything situated. Now I need to focus. I got a business to run, got things to get moving on because they've taken a back seat, and it's like, because it's like just finding that groove, it's just finding that groove again, that where you're creating. That's kind of why, I was telling Blake, that's one of the reasons for me to do the podcast, is to do something different to get the creative juices flowing,
Mm-hmm.
you know, to see what happens, see where it goes, get out there, talk to people, get inspired by people, get ideas from people, you know, and kind of see where and see what happens.
And hopefully inspire other people along the way, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I'm not going to try to inspire anybody.
I am not accepting applications for a new co-host.
No, I mean, I think that'll just, you know, happen if we're just authentic,
Yeah.
you know,
I mean,
with
that's
what
the
we're
key.
doing. I think what'll inspire people, it's not going to be us that inspire people.
No.
It'll be people that we're talking to
Yeah.
that'll inspire people.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Just have, because even like, so we've lined out like the first 5 guests that we'd like to have on the show. They're people that we know pretty well to a degree, or at least I know well, or you know well.
Right. Some combination
Some
of
combination
the two.
of the two. That's why actually I was thinking about this the other day, and I was like, I don't really like podcast, and I don't want to compare ourselves to other podcasts because we're not, you know, this is we don't even know where this is going to go really. But like, I like podcasts better that are single host, for lack of a better word, podcasts.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say I like them better, but I don't really listen to any podcasts that have 2 people that host it together, you know. But that being said, I think that the thing that's good about there being 2 of us is it kind of widens the web, or that 6 degrees of separation of people that we can get in here and talk to,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But that's why I was asking, you know, if you talk to Brody, because man, I want to just get him in here quick. I want to just start doing this.
Why not? Let's do it.
Yeah,
We're here.
yeah. Well, and I know that, you know, some of the people we've talked to are on board, and some of them
Are
a little bit hesitant.
Yeah. With good, you know, good
Hesitant
reason.
to push send.
Yeah,
as he put it.
you can't.
We're talking about someone specific, so
You know who you are.
you know who you are. When you listen to this, you know exactly who you are, and you're going to get your ass on this podcast, and you're going to tell some of your hilarious stories that only happen to someone like you. So get over it and get on the podcast and start talking. When was the first time you heard the word podcast?
Oh shit! I don't know. A few years ago at least, I'm sure, but I really couldn't tell you.
For me, being a computer nerd,
Yeah.
2005-ish. Yeah, 2005-ish. I hear the word podcast, and I'm like, what?
What the hell
I
is
got
that?
it. I mean, I got the concept of it. The company I worked for was doing what we call webinars,
Right. Yeah.
right? Which was training through, you know,
Web
web-based
interface.
interfaces. But so I just, you know, a podcast to me was kind of the same thing, except it was more one-sided, you know. But yeah, it's crazy to look at what's happened in the podcast space.
Yeah, it's blown up. There's a million of them out there.
Yeah. Well, what's cool, and the credit, I mean, I listen to Joe Rogan podcasts all the time, and he's always saying to his friends and stuff, just do a podcast. If you want to do it, just do it.
Yeah.
Just start doing it.
Yeah.
You know?
And that's, you look back at some of his old stuff, you know, way back in the day. That's all he did. It was like, let's do it.
Just
I
sitting
mean,
there.
granted, he had the name behind him and all that at that time because it was comedy and so on. But they're enjoyable to listen to and watch, you know.
Yeah.
And the message that it sends out.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, is the amount of, that's why I love big podcasts like that, because you get, you know, I wouldn't say like-minded people, but you get to hear different opinions, change your
Highly educated
Dude,
opinions too, especially on a
a lot
larger
of
show
times,
like that,
yeah.
which is great and amazing. And
Dude,
that's the
I've listened
idea.
to stuff, and you got to be careful too, because like I've listened to stuff on podcasts where it's changed my perspective on stuff, and then like, but at times, and then like I'll listen to a podcast that's got one guest on, and it's and I've formulated an opinion about something based on that guest, and then like let's say 6 months later, another guest comes on who gives a different opinion about that same subject,
Mm-hmm.
and my first reaction is to be like, I don't agree with that. Because first to the table was this other person's opinion.
Absolutely.
And I have to go, okay,
Welcome
wait a
to
minute.
conditioning.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like you just, or like confirmation bias, you just,
Mm-hmm.
you're like, oh, that idea sounds good. That idea works for me,
Mm-hmm.
But you got to just sometimes go, okay, wait a minute. Do I really believe that? Or is it just because it's an idea that sounded good? Someone articulated it in a way that made sense to
Resonated
me.
with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that's, man, I tell you what.
It's an ugly, twisted web all the way through.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
No.
Yeah. We actually talked about calling the podcast It Doesn't Matter.
Yeah. Which I think is still a good name.
Yeah. It does matter, though. It matters individually to the person, That's all you can affect change on is yourself.
Yeah.
And create your...
And that's the ultimate truth,
Yeah. I mean, you can have a positive impact on people around you, but the better you are as a person... This chair is squeaky as shit, man. The better you are as a person, the more effect you can have on the people around you.
For sure.
And
that just all starts from within, of course. And, the thing is, that's the beautiful conundrum we live in.
Yeah.
Freedom of choice and so on is... I think most people, you can articulate that too. And I think most people could get on board and go, no, that makes sense. I get that. But to actually do it, to put in the work...
Oh, dude, that happens to me all the time.
...is nearly, not impossible, but it is very difficult. And to get someone motivated enough to...
It's hard to change your patterns.
Oh, I mean, you're conditioned since you were born. It's so hard to change your patterns.
I do it all the time. I'll listen to stuff. I'll learn new concepts. And it could be anything from personal stuff to business stuff or whatever. And I'm like, dude, that idea, that's a great idea. I want to do that. I want to put that into practice. So hard, dude.
It is. What's crazy is I don't remember what theory it was or what the name of the theory is, but they say, you only have to do something 21 times before it becomes a habit.
I thought it was more than 21 times.
No, I'm pretty sure it's 21.
Sure?
Pretty sure.
All right.
I think I learned that in one of my classes.
I'll take your word for it.
But anyways, I mean, it's only 21 times. But to build that condition back, into pretty much refute what you knew before is really difficult.
Yeah.
Really, really difficult. And if I'm going to recommend anything, honestly, get some motivational speakers in your Spotify or in your playlist or whatever, and just crank that stuff. I mean, eventually it'll start taking hold. And there's a lot of great ones out there.
Yeah.
I know it really helped me to stay inspired and motivated.
Well, Blake was telling me when he was telling me about this website Goalcast, right? And it's just filled with different people, different inspirational speakers, and not even inspirational speakers, just different smart people, educated people, philosophers, actors, whoever, you name it, military people, just giving these, like the equivalent of these little TED Talks. But, you Blake and kind of the way he's wired, right? And very methodical about things, very analytical about things, making decisions, stuff like that, right? And so when a guy like that tells you that he's just been having like Goalcast and IdeaPod feeds pop up on his phone, and he watches these little short videos and stuff, and he explains it like, even though like he's personally going through this whole situation with moving his mom and her health and all this stuff, very stressful situation, but he's like, it seeps in your head.
It does.
And then he's like, my perspective on things start to change. And honestly, I would probably argue that when life's good and you take that shit in, it probably has an impact. But I bet you when life's shitty and you take that stuff in, it has a better chance of grabbing hold. You think, or no?
No, absolutely, because it's the negative. We are unfortunately negatively biased creatures, and we talked about earlier, touched based on it earlier. We have been programmed that way for millennia because we had to survive as a species. The world ain't that dangerous anymore. We don't need to worry about that kind of stuff.
Right. So, for the sake of anyone listening to this podcast, the analogy to that being wired for negative. What did you say? What was the word? Negative bias.
Negative bias. Yeah.
The analogy for that was this: evolutionary speaking, you're a hunter gatherer and you're walking through the forest down a trail hunting and gathering, and you hear a rustle in the leaves, you're wired to assume that that's danger, that it's a lion, that it's a leopard, whatever, something that can kill you.
Saber-tooth tiger.
There you go. You're wired to think that, when in reality, 9 times out of 10, that rustling in the leaves is a bird or it's a mouse. But for your survival needs, you were wired to think the worst case scenario. So the person I listened to explain this said that this is what happens in life. Because we're hardwired to anticipate the worst scenario, which was a survival mechanism, we go day to day in life and things happen, and we are instinctively expect the worst. Right? Now, some people more than others, because we're all in a different scale on how we handle that kind of stuff. But the point being is that we live in a environment and live in a time frame where we're safer than we've ever been.
It's not necessary
and we don't
anymore.
need that. So we've got to kind of overcome that wiring, or overcome that instinct. But man, I mean, everybody does it. I do it.
Well,
you do
I
it,
mean,
and you see people you care about do it. I mean, we know people personally that they're just wired to expect the worst.
And none of us are ever going to get rewired enough to not, to some degree or another, but bring the attention to it, recognize it, and you just work on it. I mean, that's all there is to it. As long as you can bring awareness to it,
That's what I always tell my kids, right? What you just said. Just being aware, just paying attention to just being aware of the concept can make a huge difference.
Giant difference. Because you start to question things, and when you question things, your perspective changes, and when your perspective changes, your thoughts about that change.
That's what's so frustrating. That's hard enough with yourself.
Yeah.
That's what's so frustrating in relationships, is that, like, and it's an ego thing, but you want someone to, if you want someone to be able to question, or just it's like saying, just for a minute, conceive of the possibility that things aren't really the way you think they are. Just do the exercise and go and say to yourself, what if Jesus himself or whoever came down and was like, you're wrong about this, Eric. Just do the exercise. You'd have to shift. I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to get at, but it's just crazy to think how easy it is to just stay in those patterns and,
again, it's the safe zone.
Not be aware of it.
It's the safe zone.
Well, we talked about that years ago, right? What we started to call pushing zones.
Yeah.
Which is your comfort zones.
Yeah.
Right? Another safe zone, another word to put that is comfort zone. For me, anyway.
Yeah, it is. It's the safe zone, and it's what you know. And some people are so entrenched in it that they just honestly believe it to be truth. And for them, it is their truth. So you have to, at the end of the day, kind of respect that in a way, which doesn't make anything easier. But
makes nothing easier.
No.
You know what's funny is, like, just inevitably, because of our situations, like, anytime we sit down and do a podcast like this where it's just me and you, that's why having a guest is going to be the heart of this thing.
They'll help keep us on point too.
Right. Well, because inevitably, I guarantee you, just human nature, no matter what we start talking about, it's always going to roll back to our current situations.
Yeah, and it's going to roll back to, I hate to keep using the word, but perspectives and human psychology. I mean, that's what we are dealing with on every level, every day.
Yeah, that's true.
And
yeah, what else is there to say about that?
Yeah.
That's what we're dealing with every day. Well, and that's what's, like, gonna be, again, I keep beating a dead horse. That's what's gonna be so fun about talking to people. It's just learning about people and what they've been through, or how their sense of humor works or how they view things.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
It goes back to your point you mentioned a minute ago with the negative bias and stuff, and how things are much more readily available to sink in during a negative state of mind,
Right.
or a traumatic crisis state of mind.
Lost your train of thought?
I did. I totally just dropped it. I'm sorry.
That's all right. That's all right. That's going to happen from time to time. We're not perfect. Unedited, unfiltered.
That's right.
We
Welcome.
just yeah.
Welcome.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Welcome.
Welcome to
Chaos.
the chaos of life and doing a podcast.
Yep.
Yeah. So listen, we did it, dude. We did an hour. And I have no idea if anything we said is interesting at all. But we did an hour. So I think we want to try to do, I'd like to try to do one of these a week.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
If we can get there. We may not be able to, depending on who we got in. The thing is like, we're going to have to plan enough ahead, or at least have enough ideas ahead of who we want to have, because if person A, B, or C, or all three of the A, B, or C can't do it, you know,
schedule.
Yeah, and we might go. It might be a week or two, but you know, but the listener out there in podcast land's probably not going to know, because you know, like we talked about, it's just getting some of these recorded and getting them built up. But that'll be, I think, you agree? Try to do one a week.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That would be my goal as well.
Yeah, get some interesting people in here. Start talking to them. Start laughing. You know, see if we can get them to open up about things they wouldn't necessarily open up about.
Mm-hmm.
And we just keep rocking and rolling with it.
Yeah.
All right, man. I think we call it good. I think that doing an hour was not necessarily a challenge, but you know, I hope we get a guest in here and we can get 2 hours going. I think that's where the real meat and potatoes.
You get the conversation rolling, it'll just naturally happen.
Yeah, definitely. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
Nope, I'm out. See you later.
All right. Thanks, guys.